All right, let's call this meeting of the Yampa YWG Roundtable to order. Oh, she turned it on. Oh, she's recording? Yeah. I mean, read it out. You got the agenda, Sally? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll call this meeting to order. I'm going to have Kristen call the roll for the members. So listen for your name. Those online, it's the same order that we have on the website. So go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. Sonia Mason.
Maybe speak up a little bit.
Sonia Mason.
Here. Present.
Miranda Kowchek.
I don't see Miranda.
Right. Doug Overton.
Sure.
Thank you. June Baxter. June Baxter.
I don't see you.
Alden Van Brink.
Yes.
Ken Brenner.
Present.
Sean Loder. I skipped Mike Cameron. Mike Cameron.
Present.
Thank you. Jay Sheehan.
Here.
Jay.
Here. Present.
Thank you. Tim Winkler. No. Casey Green. Casey Green.
She said she was going to join by Zoom, but I don't see her on.
Maybe she's just Rebecca Riesler. Here. Cal Hendrickson. Here. Madison Luxworthy. Here. Will Myers. Will Myers. Kim Aircheese. Frank Alphone.
Present.
Thank you. Rich Thompson.
Here.
Jeff Myers.
Zoomed.
Noted. Doug Monger.
That's present.
Thank you. Jeff Comstock.
Hello.
Hey. Doug Davis.
Here.
Charles Whiteman.
Here.
Chris Collins.
Present.
Jennifer Holloway, absent. Travis Day.
I'm here.
Bill Badaraka.
Yes, it wouldn't make it.
All right, that's good. Vince Wilczek. Vince Wilczek. T. Wright Dickinson. T. Wright. Jonathan Butler.
Here.
And Jackie Brown. Okay.
That's horrible. It's horrible. We can check Zoom here in a half hour and see who's ahead.
Okay. So Sally's, oops, sorry, I went the wrong way to that. So Sally's got the agenda up for us. We're gonna modify the agenda. We're gonna review the minutes from our last meeting. We're gonna have public comment. We're gonna talk about a CWCB update from Jeff and from Jackie if she's on by then. We're gonna have a presentation by Jeff Rodriguez on the CWCB Pebble membership handbook. We're gonna have a ASO flight presentation by Jeff Deems, who's online. We're gonna have a grant committee update from Frank. We're gonna hear actually 4 grants tonight, and we're gonna talk about 2 letters of support for 2 projects, and then we're gonna hear from the Big River IBCC committee, and we're gonna hear from the PEPO committee, and then we're gonna talk about announcements if we have time. If we don't have time, you can read the announcements for yourself and what's upcoming. And then at the very, you roll it up to the very end, Sally. It's got the potential project, the potential presentations for our July meeting at the end. So it's kind of a preview of what's upcoming. It's on the second page. There we go. So those would be the potential projects and what else that the membership wants to see. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda, or do we have changes we need to make to the agenda?
Motion by Alpo to approve the agenda. Second, Brenner.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other conversation? Okay, hearing none. We'll call the motion. All in favor of accepting the agenda as reviewed, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, the agenda is approved. First thing we want to do is review and approve the minutes from our March 13th, 2024 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at those? Yeah, they're a part of the packet too. If you want to just bring the packet up, Sally.
Okay. You'll see they're in a slightly different format. We're being encouraged by the Colorado Water Conservation Board staff to try to get away from minutes that look like transcription of what happened at the meeting and are more of a summary that are bulleted and a little easier for us for somebody to glance through and see what's there. So that's where you notice a different format. Nice job, Chris. Approve the March 13th minutes as presented.
Brenner. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion on the minutes from March 13th?
Steve, the only thing I would say, if we just get my name changed from Hendrickson to Richfield, please.
I didn't catch that, did I?
That's okay. It took me a while.
We can. You have that? Okay.
Litchfield? Yeah, I can get it to you.
Years of being the other way, Callie.
Years.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve the minutes with the change to Callie's last name. Are you good with that amendment?
Yes.
Kim, okay. Madison, you're good with your second? All right. All in favor to accept the minutes as written, changing, correcting Callie's last name, please say aye.
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 Okay, opposed, say nay. Okay, the minutes are approved.
Did that card get sent to the rules?
We're gonna sign it tonight. We got a card. Nobody sent one. Yeah. So we got a card. We're gonna have those that want to sign it, and we'll send it to Pat's family after tonight. Okay. How would you like to go about it?
I think it would be appropriate for us to ask people that are not members, that names were not called during the roll call, to introduce yourself briefly, please.
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Anonymous.
Russ Sands, Colorado Water Conservation Board. Jack Rodriguez, Colorado Water Conservation Board.
Thomas Kennedy, Tri-State Generation Transmission.
Ashley Garrison, Colorado Water Conservation Board.
Greg Peterson, Colorado Ag Water Alliance.
Mindy Figueroa, Division of Water Resources.
Tyler Snyder, Ross Ranch, Patrick Stako, Community Agriculture Alliance.
Community Agriculture Alliance and Pablo Liaison. Kristen Skronsky. And the White Green Basin Roundtable Recorder.
Asking online.
Is there anybody online that would like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, my name's Ben Kraus. I'm the regional water specialist for Colorado Parks and Wildlife for the Northwest region.
Okay, thank you. Emily, you want to introduce your...
Yeah, hi. I'll just say hello. Oh, two Emilys.
Oh, Emily Lowell.
Sorry, Emily Zamak. This is Emily Lowell. I'm the district engineer with the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District.
Okay. Emily Zamak.
Alphabetical order. I can appreciate that. I'm Emily Zamak with the CWCB, just saying hello. I'm in the Interstate Federal and Water Information section.
Okay, thank you.
And Claire Sollers, not affiliated with anybody, but always interested.
Okay. Anybody else online that I...
Hi there, Jeff Deems with Airborne Snow Observatories, and I'll be speaking to you in a moment.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else online? Okay. So, public comment, anyone that has requested time online. I didn't see anybody. Did you, Sally or Kristen? I didn't see anybody that requested time. Anybody in the room that's not a member that would like to make a public comment? Or online? Okay, hearing none and having no one request it. We'll close public comment. And we'll go to the CWCB update. Jeff.
Let me just pull this slideshow up. See if I can. All right, so just a few updates for you all. I'll start by saying the project bill, which includes a lot of appropriations for CWCB and water projects, passed. Last I was told, it was on the way to the governor's desk and awaiting signature. But you can see all the appropriations on the bill page, but a couple that I just wanted to highlight for you all that are pertinent to this group is the $23.3 million for water plan grants for the next fiscal year, starting in July. And then also $2 million to extend the turf replacement program. That program will likely look a little bit different than the pilot that we did last year. With the passing of this bill, CWCB staff is working on criteria and guidelines for that $2 million to be probably out later this year. I think maybe July 14, something like that. So just keep an eye out for those. I'll make sure to highlight that in future meetings. But just wanted to bring that to your attention. The project bill also included an ask of CWCB to create some flexibility in how we administer the remaining funds available for the technical assistance and local capacity program. So hopefully that will get signed without any pushback, and we'll be able to administer the remaining funding for those two programs in either one of those buckets. If you remember, when we got that $5 million for those two programs, it came in two separate buckets, $2.5 million for local capacity, which is where entities that were interested in applying for federal opportunities hired their own contractor to help them write a grant, a federal grant, then $2.5 million for technical assistance, which is a CWCB contractor to help out with those federal grant applications. So the flexibility would be to allow us to administer the remaining funding for that in either one of those buckets. Those funds are tied to the state's ARPA funding, so they have a spend by date. They need to be contracted by the end of this year, and so we want to, if possible, utilize all those funds by that time frame. Still have some funding available for technical assistance right now. If the project's bill goes through, we'll be able to use that for the local capacity program as well. You all are going to get a presentation on the CWCB guide coming up here in a few minutes from Russ and I. So I'll spare you the details on that, but just let you know, we've got a draft that will probably be out for public consumption first part of June, we're thinking. So we've been hard at work trying to get that ready to present to the board next week, but the draft will probably be available first part of June. Also wanted to mention the TLC challenge, or the Transformative Landscape Change Challenge. Governor Polis and the Water Conservation Board, CWCB, announced the second year of the TLC challenge. Last year we had one, and this year we're doing it again with the help of Resource Central. This is a partnership with Resource Central, and all of the information for the TLC challenge is on Resource Central's webpage. I wanted to bring this to your attention because at this time, it's got a tight deadline of June 1st. Those applications need to be in. So 15 applications will be selected for up to 2,000 square feet of water intensive turf to receive a transformation to low water xeric plants. And that's for water utilities and municipalities to kind of transform some public spaces in your jurisdiction. Also just wanted to flag the Water Conditions Monitoring Committee. If you haven't listened into one of those meetings, they're really interesting, a really good group of folks tracking precipitation indicators and a lot of climate data and all the things that we all pay attention to in this room. But the next meeting for that is May 21st. So if you're interested, you can tune in. Those meetings are virtual. They're also recorded and up on the CWCB YouTube page if you're interested in that stuff. Also, the Colorado River team is resuming their webinar series. The first one is tomorrow. So if you're interested in what's going on with Colorado River, those webinars are starting up again. They're likely going to occur monthly. First one, like I said, is tomorrow. For webinar information, you can check the CWCB calendar. I don't know that they have a standing like monthly date, like, you know, second Wednesday or anything like that. They're just going to kind of move around with the Colorado River team's really busy schedules. So keep an eye on the CWCB calendar for those. Couple other things. I already mentioned the federal technical assistance and local capacity funding. Also just wanted to mention the Wildfire Ready Watersheds program, also tied to the state's ARPA funding. So we need all those funds contracted by the end of this year. So really, if you are anticipating putting in for a Wildfire Ready Watershed grant or a technical assistance grant or ideally a local capacity grant, those grant funds, those grants need to be really submitted to CWCB by October so that we can actually get them contracted by the end of this year. Also, just want to mention WSRF deadline coming up June 1st. Water plan grant deadline coming up July 1st. If you're working on a water plan grant project or an application, that July 1st deadline comes up pretty fast. So Ashley Garrison's here in the room. You should reach out to her if you have questions or anything like that. Also, for everyone representing the covered entity here, 1051 reporting is due June 30th. With the added complexity of the water loss audit being required this year, we are able to offer a 1-year grace period for 1051 data. So if you're in need of that and your team or you haven't reached out to Sam Stein or Kevin Reedy, please do that to get that set up. I'll drop their contact information in the chat here. And I think I saw Emily chiming in about the Colorado River webinar series. Not tomorrow, rescheduled for the 20th. So the CWCB calendar was up to date yesterday when I made this slide. So maybe I should have checked today before I stepped into the meeting. But thanks, Emily. Appreciate that. I'll take any questions on these general CWCB updates, and you're going to hear a lot more from me about the CWCB guide here in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Is Jackie on by chance? Didn't see her, so I haven't talked to her this week, so I'm not sure what she's doing. So, yeah, so let's move on to the presentation, CWCB PEPO BRT membership handbook presentation. Jeff?
Oh, starting already.
You're up again.
Oh boy. Great. Let's see if I can figure out this share thing as seamlessly as I did last time.
Thanks for making the trip all the way up here.
My pleasure. Anytime I get an excuse to come up here, take it. All right. So, take it away. I'm just kidding.
So, Jeff?
Yeah.
Before you get started on this next item,
sure.
Do you have amounts of what we got left in our account and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm gonna need my computer to find that out, but I can certainly do that.
That's fine, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I can certainly do that.
the Yampa White Creek.
Yeah, I was I was expecting a budget report, I guess.
Frank's got it.
I've got it.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah, it's part of the grant stuff.
All right, so if they're gonna talk about it, that's fine.
I can confirm, but I know that Steve and Frank's accounting is pretty meticulous. But I'll look that up for sure. If you want to start.
No, just as long as it gets presented tonight.
I'll let verify, but thanks, as Jeff said, always happy to come there and thanks for having us. We'll keep this kind of short because I know your meetings are always packed, but we wanted to at least give you an overview of the work we're doing to create a Colorado Water Conservation Board guide. And we, can I just put your stats to never. So, you know, we've had at least 17 years now with roundtables and IBCC, and of course, you know, even longer with our own board. So why do we need a guide now? I think what we've seen, especially through the COVID years, are just continued questions. Some of that inspired by moving online. Jeff Myers, I really liked Zoom as an answer. That was a check. I'm going to steal that. But I think it's raised a lot of questions. Some are just ongoing questions that we get every year. Some are new things, and it just felt like it was the time to put things in one spot. In reality, we kind of have always done that for our board. We kind of have this onboarding document. But for roundtables, a lot of that learning is just kind of on the fly from the person that brought you into the roundtable, which is great if the person that brought you in is giving you the right information, and maybe not as great if it might be a little bit off base. So we wanted to have a one-stop shop for roundtables, and that's really what this is meant to be, an onboarding document that could be used equally by new board members, new roundtable members, new IBCC members, and a reference document for all those groups too to go back to and revisit when there's questions, and maybe a little bit of a living document for new questions that can't come in. What it's not meant to do is to replace, you know, current Basin bylaws or any handbooks that you have. There may be a few things in there that might question, be a question if there needs to be an update, but by and large, I think this is to reinforce and to answer some of those questions that we've always gotten. Part of this also inspired, the question of why now is I bet you may not have known that DNR recently released a policy handbook for boards and commissions. And like with anything, when there's small print, important to read, but underneath it says includes councils, committees, roundtables, and advisory groups. That handbook, frames up a lot of things that I think we were previously maybe even trying to capture a little bit in the code of conduct, or things that we're constantly get asked about, whether that's, how CORA applies to roundtables, or how we have to, what we have to do to comply with open meeting laws. There is an embedded code of ethics in there as well. It just called it into question if we have this one document that's getting into a really high level of detail. We kind of need to do a little bit of a translation and talk about the deeper level of detail for CWCB and how we all interact. So this is referenced in there, and we're putting links to a lot of things that will be helpful to roundtables. And again, I think equally to IBCC, our board, and maybe even to staff. But here's just a flavor. I'm not going to read you all these, but I bet if you kind of scan these, you'll be like, oh, I had that question at one time. How are CWCB board members appointed? Am I subject to CORA? These are all kind of flavors of questions that we got. And it seems like it would be nice for us to have one standard answer. Often it's Jeff and I, we answered that. We're digging up some old email that we had from 2 years ago. Now it's just, we're going to put it all in one spot, and it'll be something that anybody at CWCB or any of you can just reference. So what's in the guide? Obviously, these frequently asked questions are kind of, I've heard it as we've done some internal reviews of some of these don't seem frequently asked. It's true. Some are uncommon questions, things that have popped up randomly. Sometimes they're frequent, but the frequency might be every year or every other year. Sometimes they're things that across roundtables we might multiple times in 1 year. So it's a one-stop shop for questions of relevance. Topics that we'll cover are just how CWCB functions, how we work with stakeholders, how funding works. We're always giving updates to our board, especially about how funding at CWCB works, but just how we do that, how money's built out, and who owns that are always kind of ongoing questions. So we'll talk about that. A lot of reference material and links, as I noted. Probably we will not actually fold a lot of those into appendices as we've kind of started to develop this more and more. We'll probably do like we did in the water plan, where we have a common links page where everything goes and you can just reference that page. But we wanted to try to keep this short and printable to the extent that that would be helpful. In terms of printing, I imagine we would do some limited print runs. I think it could be especially helpful when a new member comes on board or if somebody wants one. But especially this year, I think we might want to keep it just online, and then maybe starting at the beginning of the year after we kind of codify everything with our board, we'd probably look to do annual updates. We'd probably have small prints available if needed. That box and related topics, I think, is just a placeholder to say where other things are relevant. We'll probably dip into those things too, especially as they relate to other frequently asked questions. General timeline, we're living it right now. We're kind of on that end of this. We started this process, at least thinking about it in January, and started going to each roundtable in earnest in February. Our goal is to have something out this spring. In reality, I think that probably is going to be somewhere at the beginning of June. We're going to talk about it with the board at our next board meeting. And I'd really like to have this up and available for people to start looking at, for us to talk about with IBCC. You probably heard this, and I'm sorry I wasn't here last meeting, but I did get a great report out from this Jeff Myers and Kent's report out from the IBCC. And I think some of the stuff in there about what are the characteristics of an IBCC member, what does it mean to be on IBCC, will fold into this as well, so that that's a piece that really has a flavor of, ground up, grassroots kind of going into this document. But if you're looking at this and you're like, gosh, my question wasn't answered, I have something that, I'd really like to see put in here, or that doesn't read the way that I thought the answer was going to come out, we'll have this up online and we'll have a, ask us a question if you got one. Our goal is to really kind of, like I said, keep this in somewhat of a living format for the near term and the long term. Near term, that will be very flexible because what I think we're going to do is just workshop this a little bit with our board internally, make sure that we've got things fleshed out, make sure that we're including any new answers that come in, because I know it's hard to hear this, look at it, and think about questions, but when you're reading it, it may bring up 5 more that you had. So we want to make sure that we've kind of got this right. And then we will either, probably look to codify this with our board either sometime at the September or November board meeting. If we get a lot of questions and comments, it may be something that we talk about at the C9 Summit and codify after. The goal is not to have this be something that's uncomfortable for anybody, really just to be a helpful tool. So we'll take the time to do that right. But that's really it. So if you do have something you just want to make sure that's in there, you can let us know today, or when that rolls out, you certainly have plenty of opportunity to do that, or at future roundtable meetings. We'll grab Jeff and I and talk about it there too. So I think that's really it.
Draft that we can review. Is there a link there that we're supposed to go?
The draft will come out, like I said, I think we're probably on trajectory for one of the first weeks in June. And it'll just kind of come out with everybody. One of the things that we realized with this is, if a lot of this is just the way things work, it's not really, a lot of times we put out a draft and we ask for public comment when, it's something that we're kind of co-creating. This is really us just putting all the rules in one place. That said, I imagine there's some things that we might have said wrong, or it didn't read well, or there's something we didn't include. And so that's why we'll kind of roll this out with some ongoing questions to keep it in a draft state, but look for that at the beginning.
So like rest of the code of conduct is out there. Will this replace that code of conduct? So it will now be in your handbook because we reference that in our bylaws, that code of conduct, that 2-page document.
Yes, great question.
So will that go away, the code of conduct, and we'll have to change our bylaws to reference the appropriate section in this?
Excellent question. Jeff and I just had this discussion about a week ago, because we did kind of say, well, maybe we just are defaulting to the DNR handbook. But to be honest, I think both are probably helpful, and because of the exact reason you said, I think we'll just reference both in there so that it's still relevant. I think though they largely repeat, probably the CWCB one feels more relevant if you're reading it from a roundtable perspective. There's a little bit of weird language in the DNR handbook because it was probably first drafted with like some of the boards and commissions in mind, and then slapped on this exercise. So it'll be probably a little bit of a crosswalk throughout. So our goal is to try to make it the least intensive on you to have to actually do anything afterwards. So we will include that. It will not replace it, which have both. Yeah.
I get a point of order. Sorry, remind everybody to speak to the owl.
To both owls.
Both owls.
Any other questions for Russ or Jeff on the handbook? Okay. The only other question I would ask is, are we talking about any just best management practices, ideas about, because you know better than anyone that all 9 roundtables don't do things the same. And are there going to be suggestions about this seems to be a good way to handle grant applications or whatever? Are there any of those best management practice suggestions?
Jen, I'm gonna talk to the owl, but you know I'm looking at you. And that's a great question too, Ken. I think that to some extent, as we've tried to make this the lightest touch as we could for roundtables, we're certainly not trying to make it seem like we're telling people what to do. I think there are some questions that come up enough that where we can kind of insert some best practices, we will. So the one thing I'm thinking about is quorum, for example. In the past, some roundtables have had like a 90% quorum requirement, and that seems a little bit burdensome. And I don't think that matches the intent. That said, there's not a specific through line in legislation that says, here's what the roundtables must do. So we'll point to things that said, you know, here's what our board does. You know, it's more likely we want to be in this kind of somewhere between the 51 to maybe 75 max range. So we'll give some loose guidance in that way. On grants, I think it's more probably about just clarifying. There's some questions, and we worked with Ashley and her team on some of these as well, that we just get enough, like, when should I go for a water plane grant versus WSRF? And we get that a lot. Or, you know, which needs, you know, letters of support, or, you know, can I give it for water plane grant? Of course, like we'll answer some of those basic things. And again, whole point of getting this out there and daylighting, I kind of can't wait, is if there's other stuff that you want, then just tell us and we'll put that in there. We may not have thought of the fantasy of things, but we will try to include those as it makes sense.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's less about telling roundtables and the YWC like how to do things and more about like what to do and how it practically works in 2024. If there are any sideboards that weren't thought about in 2005 when the legislation was drafted, I think it's more about that and less about, you know, you should do things this way. Although we certainly recommend things like the meeting minutes template that, you know, you all are kind of transitioning to, making things easier on all of you, realizing you're a volunteer group. It takes a lot of time to be here. We really value the stakeholder input and want this to keep going and just try to make things as seamless and as easy as possible for all of you.
Okay, any other questions on the handbook? If not, Jeff Deems?
I am here.
All right, Jeff's here to talk to us about the ASL flight data.
I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you all can see that in there.
Yeah.
Looking good? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the Roundtable board for the invitation to come give you an update on our flight program this year. I'm here representing both Airborne Snow Observatories and also the Colorado Airborne Snow Measurement Program, which I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. That's a stakeholder-led effort to expand the Airborne Survey Program statewide. In particular, I'll share some of our recent results from this first year of flying in the Yampa Basin. So briefly, a brief overview of the challenge and what the Airborne Snow Observatory is. The big deal here is that our snowpack is our biggest reservoir, and it behooves us to know exactly how much snow is up there in order to better forecast runoff and plan for allocation of our resources. The snowpack is tremendously complicated. It forms these crazy patterns all over the place that change year to year. Some parts of it are consistent. Some parts of it depend on how the storms evolve and how the snowmelt progresses. As we're all aware, our typical mode of monitoring the snowpack is through snow-tell stations and manual snow courses. These are point measurements and typically in middle elevation forest clearings. They are a critical part of our water management infrastructure, and especially critically, these SNOTEL stations measure continuously. We're getting a readout from them every hour continuously through the snow season. But in effect, they're a one-dimensional view of our snowpack. And a lot can happen at areas outside of those locations that affect what our snow water and therefore our runoff resource is going to be. So hence this challenge, this lack of view into the rest of the watershed really presents a vulnerability to us. If we don't know how much snow is exactly up there, we don't know how much there is to run off, and we can get surprised in the late season. To help address this, we've created the Airborne Snow Observatories. This is an airborne program. We use a combination of remote sensing instruments on a twin-engine aircraft to measure snow depth, snow water equivalent, and snow albedo, or its reflectivity, at high resolution and high accuracy watershed-wide. We use a LiDAR or a laser scanner to measure surface elevation. We do that twice, once when there's no snow, and again when there is snow, and subtract those elevation maps to get snow depth. That gives us a highly accurate snow depth measurement every 10 feet everywhere across the watershed. We then run as a snowpack snow physics model to evolve the snowpack. It ingests those snow depth data and gives us snow density. Density times depth gives us water equivalent, and water equivalent is what we're all after. At the same time, our other instruments, the imaging spectrometers, measure the reflectance of the solar reflectance of the snowpack across the full solar spectrum, and that tells us exactly how much sunlight is getting absorbed by the snowpack. Sunlight is our biggest snow melter, and things like dust on snow have a dramatic impact on how much solar energy goes into the snow and therefore how fast it melts. We combine these airborne measurements with physical models. I mentioned the snowpack model. We also have a hydrology model, which I'll talk about in a bit, that helps us forecast snowmelt runoff leveraging these spatial maps. And all of this was conceived with operations and decision support in mind from the get-go. So all of our operations, from how we fly to how fast we process the data and quickly turn the products around, typically within 3 days of the flight, is designed for low latency in these data products for maximum relevance for decision support. We started this program in 2013 as a NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory project, and after 8 years at NASA, the majority of our funding was coming from operational sources, exceeding NASA's agency science mission, and they helped us transition out in 2019. And we brought all of our staff with us to our new entity, Airborne Snow Observatories, Inc., doing the same thing under a different hat. And more about us at our website, airbornesnowobservatories.com. As we've been building out this program, it's seen strong growth in California, and in Colorado, it's been growing a little bit more slowly. To help with that effort, the Colorado Airborne Snow Measurement Program, or CASM, was formed in 2020, really a network of stakeholders interested in expanding and sustaining the reach of the Airborne Snow Survey Program in the state of Colorado. Its current leadership has representatives from a number of water agencies, with leadership from the CWCB, as well as a number of Front Range entities, Dolores, Colorado River District, us at ASO Inc., and Leonard Rice Engineers helping out with that as well. I urge you to check out the CASM website at coloradosnow.org. There's lots of current information there on news and updates about the program, and recent expansions and opportunities for such, as well as an archive of flight report and model forecast report surveys from Colorado watersheds. Of particular note was the 2022 water plan grant that the CASM group proposed and received. And that was a pretty large grant that allowed us, through leveraging of local and federal program match funds, to add a bunch of snow-on flights in a number of basins statewide, to add snow-free baseline flights, to make a number of basins what we call shovel-ready. That included the Yampa and Elk headwaters, which we flew this year for the first time, and to conduct a bunch of outreach and data workshop activities. The more programmatic elements that CHASM takes on is really providing that foundation and looking to the future for how to sustain and expand the program statewide. In that context, here is what our 2024 flight program looks like in Colorado. All the blue basins on here are what we're flying this year with one or more flights. Conejos and Dolores down south, East and Taylor in the upper Gunnison, the upper Roaring Fork, the Blue River, upper South Platte, Colorado headwaters above Windy Gap, all the northern Front Range basins from Clear Creek through the Poudre, and then the Yampa and Elk as well. Funding for this, organized through CHASM and lots of local stakeholder input, comes from local and regional agencies, Roundtable and state WSRF grants, CWCB projects bill, several different federal agencies, including USGS and Bureau of Reclamation, and new this year, the Upper Colorado River Commission, contributing funds. So shout out to our Colorado delegation there as well, administering those funds through the CWCB. In addition to the flight program, we've got, with CWCB projects bill support, wharf hydro runoff forecasting, and in all of these basins. The Colorado Basin River Forecast Center is providing experimental forecasts using the ASO data. And all of this is orchestrated with CHASM stakeholder coordination for flight planning and general program updates. So this year we have 3 flights in the Colorado headwaters. That was facilitated by a reclamation grant. We've done 2 of those. My little check marks here show us what flights we've done so far this year. We've got 2 flights in each of the Dolores, Conejos, Upper Gunnison, Roaring Fork, Yampa, Elk, and Blue and Upper South Platte. We have flown both flights in Dolores and Conejos, and the first of 2 in the rest of those. And then the Northern Front Range basins were all funded for a single flight. The data for these from these activities are available, freely available on our website at data.airbornesnowobservatories.com. So zooming in on the Yampa, being an ex-steamboat resident, I was pretty excited to get these first flights in to really see what the full distribution of the snowpack looks like. Here's our 2 flight patterns. We flew the whole area in 2 separate flights based out of Eagle. And there's a lot more detail in the survey reports, which those of you on our email list got that emailed, but you can also get those on the website or on the CHASM website. Some of what that report contains are various maps and summary graphics and summary tables of the water equivalent broken out by subcatchments. So the enormous table on the right there is showing all kinds of subbasins. The 2 biggest ones, of course, being the Yampa at Steamboat with 445,000 acre-feet of SWE on April 11th, and the Elk near Milner at 379,000 acre-feet. Once we have this full spatial distribution represented by the map on the left there, we can start interrogating it in different ways. We can add it up by those subbasins. We can look at the distribution by elevation, which is what the top center graph shows, with the largest amount of water equivalent volume hanging out between 8,000 and about 10.5. And we can also look at it by elevation and aspect. That's what the bottom circular plot is showing there. A pretty powerful new perspective into the snowpack. A few more graphics. I'm not quite sure what kind of screen you guys are looking at in there, so hopefully this is big enough to see, but just some images of what these snow depth data looks like in various parts of the watershed. This is the full Elk River The color coding here, the shallower snow in reds and grading up through yellows and into the deepest snow in blue, which is 3 meters or greater in the darkest blues. So there's the elk. If we move a little bit to the south, here is kind of Buffalo Pass to Rabbit Ears Pass with the town of Steamboat, bottom center there. Pretty, I can stare at these forever and we don't have enough time to go through it all, but I'm seeing really cool patterns in the ribbon forest up on Buffalo Pass, where one of our typically top performing snowtells in the state is the Tower Snowtell. And then, you know, an interesting gradient going down to Rabbit Ears with a good bit less snow down in the Rabbit Ears zone compared to Buffalo Pass. If we zoom in a little bit, here's the lower half of the ski area. Want to give a shout out to my friends on the slope maintenance and grooming crew there. You could see a lot of their handiwork at play, especially down in the terrain parks there. But really, I think gives you a sense of just how high resolution these data are, seeing all kinds of different snow patterns there. Moving southward into the Yampa headwaters, you know, Sarvis Creek, lower left, you can see Catamount and Stagecoach reservoirs there, and then up into the flat tops, top right. Really pretty big gradients in snow accumulation. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone who who knows the terrain, of course, but we can really see lots of variation at all scales here. If we zoom in a little bit on the flat tops, you know, a lot of water in the upper Yampa. A lot of it is thin snow across a lot of area, and then small areas of really deep snow at the base of the cliffs up in the flat tops area. So putting these data to work, pretty pictures are great, but really what we want is some decision support information. This is kind of our pipeline. So we've talked mostly about how we fly and I didn't give you much detail in the processing, but that's where we get to our primary snow products of water equivalent depth and albedo. From there, we can stick these data into forecast models like the one we run, which is Wharf Hydro. We work with the river forecast centers and all of their stakeholders that use their forecasts and the experimental forecasts they're producing. And really, we can work with any public or private forecast system or entity to support any decision support framework. A number of our stakeholder partners run their own in-house snowpack and runoff models, and we can support them as well with these same data sets. In parallel effort this year, I mentioned the RFC experimental forecasts and our ASO Wharf Hydro forecasts. In both cases, we've got two very different model systems, but both of them ingesting those flight survey data. The River Forecast Center is basically dividing up our data sets into their water equivalent polygons that they typically build from SNOWTEL data and sticking those new water equivalent values into their Snow 17 snow model. With the Wharf Hydro model, with the much more physically specified system that has full forest canopy architecture and land cover and soil representation and runoff routing, but a similar effort in terms of getting the flight data, replacing the snowpack in that model, which is typically evolved using weather model forecast data. So an example of these two parallel forecast products. On the left, we see the RFC experimental forecast. So the timeline graph we're seeing there in the purples is their official forecast traces with each of their ESP model guidance shown at the first of the months in the purple dots with the 10, 30, 50, 70, and 90th exceedance values shown by the dots. And then hopefully you can see towards the right end of the graph is some light blue or aqua colored dots. And that's the experimental forecast using the ASO flight data. Just looking at the 50% exceedance values, ingesting ASO data dropped this forecast at the Ellicott Milner gauge from 379,000 acre feet to 327. It's about a 14% drop by changing the snowpack in that model. In parallel, we're running the WRF hydro model. It produces a similar ensemble forecast. By ensemble, we mean we run a bunch of different future weather traces through the model. In this case, with WRF hydro, we're running each of the past 23 years of observed weather through the model to produce a plume of possible futures. And then from that plume, we extract the exceedance values, which is the central tendency of that plume. We could see that in the table down at the bottom, similar to the RFC table, with the 50% exceedance value for this for the elk coming in around 339 in April. That's been fairly steady, dropping a little bit as it's been a little bit dry. We're producing regular forecasts after each flight update, as well as about every week through the melt season there. The beauty of having the WRF hydro model everywhere is that we can produce forecasts for basically any stream segment or reservoir inflow or stream gauge. So we've worked closely with Emily and Andy at Upper Yampa District to identify key forecast points and produce forecasts like I was showing an example of on the prior page for a whole bunch of different locations within the Yampa and Elk watersheds. Too much to go into here, but I'll highlight the report later where more of that information is delivered. This is a pretty new program this year, so we're just getting used to modeling in the Yampa and Elk systems. We're working with the Upper Yampa District to bring real-time stream flow and reservoir inflow observations into the system, so that we can produce a managed or forecast blend rather than just producing a full natural flow forecast. So work in progress, but great partners with the district there, and we thank them for their continued engagement. A brief animation here from mid-April through mid-May showing water equivalent. It's the Yampa and Elk basins on the left here, and we're also seeing the wider domain looking into the Colorado headwaters and the Northern Front Range as well. You can see some of these basin outlines change pattern as this animation proceeds through. That's when the flight update, survey update gets ingested into the model, and you can see that the flight survey data adds quite a lot of spatial variability that is just really difficult to represent any other way. So that spatial variability is key. And not only does it make the total basin water content more accurate, but it also puts the snow in the right place. And that's key for getting the melt timing right. So the models run daily, and we ingest flight data when it's available. I mentioned the reports. These have been this is the WRF hydro forecast reports. This is separate from the flight survey reports, but looks a bit similar. Lots of information here with all the different forecast points, et cetera, and lots to dig into there. So again, these are available. We send these out through our email list to the different basins. So get in touch with us if you want to get on that list and you aren't. They're also available through our website and through the CHASM website as well. So just a few thoughts to wrap up here, and then I'm happy to take any questions. Statewide, we're seeing quite a varied picture on how the full basin SWE volume that we measure compares to that derived from the station data. Some basins, like the Dolores, coming in quite a lot lower than we were expecting based on the stations alone. Others we're seeing quite a significant bump up. So no real consistent picture statewide, but lots of movement around using the flight data. Dust on snow is a big deal everywhere. It's definitely in the Yampa and Elk basins. We could see it with our spectrometers. That's going to enhance snowmelt rates anytime the sun is out. In parallel with that, our observations in multiple basins statewide have seen minimal snowpack cold content. That's the amount of energy it would take to bring the snowpack up to the melting point such that any more energy melts it. Typically, Colorado snowpacks are quite cold, which represents a significant buffering capacity against that onset of melt. This year, we're not really seeing that, not much cold content. So really, we're pretty poised for a rapid runoff season between the dust and the minimal cold content. So really, fingers crossed for a continued wet and cloudy spring to stretch the snowpack out a bit. We've got more upcoming surveys throughout May, as I mentioned on some earlier slides. That includes the second Yampa and elk flight, currently targeting mid to late May for that. Please reach out with any questions or visit our websites, and I am happy to take any questions now.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Hey, Jeff, this is Frank Alfone. I manage the our water district, and 90% of our water comes from the Buffalo Pass area. And I was noticing on some of those forecast points and the SWE measurements that you were getting may not necessarily line up what we get off of the tower site. Is there a way to explain that, or how do you work through that if you add up like all those forecast points, and should it equal or be close to what the tower site is reading at that flight time?
So if we compare to the tower site, we can do that looking just at our gridded data. We could pluck out the pixel that contains the tower SNOTEL, and that lines up quite well. The challenge with the stations is they're not giving us a volume of water equivalent. They're giving us a point measure of that water equivalent at that spot. And then how we translate that to the full basin is a matter of some art. There's no direct way to do that. So we're using those data in how we run our models. We use them for comparison and validation of our depth measurements, and we use it in bias correcting, if necessary, the densities that we get out of our model. But there's no other direct comparison at the basin scale to be made with the station data. And that is the key distinction. It's the combination of the two measurements, the measurement through time from the station and the measurement across the whole landscape from the airborne measurements, that really gives us that full four-dimensional picture.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff? Anybody online have a question for Jeff? Hearing none, I think you silenced them with data.
Done to silence. Please, as I said, please reach out with any questions. We're really excited to engage with folks. And like I said, I'm personally very excited to be working in the Yampa this year.
And I guess I would, Jeff, I do have one question. I guess just asking you to provide us with a general summary. It sounds like somewhere around the average, but maybe a little below average of snowpack, but a little warmer snow than usual, where we might see, if the weather changed, a more rapid runoff. Is that kind of a good summary of what you found?
The second part, yes. It's pretty difficult to say, to talk in terms of averages, since we don't have a long-term record of knowing the entire snowpack. So it's a little dangerous. We as humans naturally compare to our experience. So it's natural to think about how this compares to average or last year. And the long-term record from the NRCS is really good for that. The challenge is when the basin conditions are not well represented by that small number of points. And we don't know this year whether that it seems to be the case that the stations are doing a decent job in the Yampa. We've seen in other basins where they're not. Again, the Port Dolores is seeing a lot less snow than we thought was down there. So I think this is something where we need to think both in terms of the ability to look at the snowpack volume now from the flight surveys, and also think in terms of a sustained program where we can really start to see how the basin snow dynamics evolve over a longer period of time and really help us understand that hydrology.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody.
You're up. Yes, sir. Sally, you want to pull up that PowerPoint, please? I want to stand up. A little easier to see everybody. And I'll try to talk at that. We call it the hour. So tonight, this is going to, I'm going to try to do my best to keep us on time here. I think we're doing pretty good as far as our schedule tonight. So if you want to go to the next slide. So I want to quickly run through the agenda. We're going to actually hear from 3 different applicants tonight with 4 grants. The first one is the 2 grants for the PEPO grant. The first one is the CWCB 2025 grant. And the second one will be the 3-year grants for the WRSF, the Yampa Creek grant. The next one will be the Stillwater Reservoir Blanket Under Drain, presented by the Bear River Reservoir Company. The third one will be the Upper Yampa Reservoir Rehabilitation, and that's going to be presented by the Colorado Ag Water Alliance. And then we're going to have a letter of support presentation, very quick 5-minute presentation from Jonathan about that. In the packet of information, there was the documents that include the minutes from the last grant meeting, which was on April 10th. And then we put together a grant summary for the 3 grants or 4 grants we're going to listen to tonight. So next slide, please. So before we get into the grants, I wanted to briefly just provide a quick update about Basin Roundtable funds and where we're at. We started the year with approximately $531,000 in our account. And if all these grants are approved tonight, which equal about $112,000, that will put the basin at a level which is below $450,000. And that's an important threshold to remember, because if we get below $450,000, we're then eligible for the $300,000, which will be allocated sometime in the fall. So we'll see how things go tonight, but that's kind of our game plan. And the total amount of, that slide's kind of hard to read, I apologize. The total amount of grants, if they're all approved tonight, for the fiscal or for the whole cycle, if you will, is about $146,000. Next slide. Next slide, please. No problem. Okay, so this will be our first presentation, but before we go into this, I wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about the grants matrices. If you guys remember at the March meeting, it was in your minutes, the grants committee is exploring the use of a new matrix. And what we did for this grant cycle is we actually scored all 3 of the grants, I should say, using the existing matrix and what are we calling the proposed matrix. So what we found, just a few takeaways, is when we scored the grants, we're utilizing both matrices. It was pretty interesting that the one that scored the highest on both the existing matrix and the new matrix. And that kind of followed through the second in line, third in line. It's much easier to use, the new matrix. There was more or less variation in the scores. There wasn't such a big gap between like the highest score and the lowest score with the proposed new matrix. And we feel as a committee that it will be a better matrix to use to score kind of a broader range of different applications. Now, we were going to bring the new matrix to the committee or to the board for approval at this meeting, but we still have a little bit more work to do. There's still some things we got to work through on how we're scoring the grant. There's some subjective matters we're working through. So bear with us. We'll get you a final draft matrix here in the near future, but I wanted to just kind of share a few of the takeaways. I think the consensus, if I can speak for the committee, is that we like the new matrix, but it needs a few tweaks, if you will. So I just want to give everyone a quick update on that. So stay tuned for more information on that. So before we turn it over to Patrick, who's going to present the Yampa White Green education and outreach grants, I wanted to just share that there's two grants tonight. The first one is the CWCB annual grant, which is the PEPO grant. And this is what I like to call for the Basin coordinator, if you will. So this grant, we don't have any slides for this one. This one is something that will be applied through via the WSR fund directly, and that date is, I think, June 1st. So Patrick, you want to add anything else on that one before we ask for Steve to take it over for the motion?
So remember, we used to get Russ has given us some funds to actually do public education participant outreach. We used to get $6,500. Now there's an annual grant that has to be applied for. That's $25,000. Each roundtable has that for the day. Somebody can go and apply for that grant to be an education grant. You guys have Community Agricultural Alliance been doing that. We're going to continue to do that as long as you let us do that. Apply for that. That grant's going to pay for administration. It's going to be about $9,000 for administration. That's for Sally now to develop the agendas and the minutes for the PEPO committee, attend the meetings, develop meeting advertisements still to our regional newspapers as long as they hold on, and then support of the recorder to help out with the subcommittee minutes, etc. $16,000 of the $25,000 grant is going to be still to continue the support of the canopies, pay you guys to go get the canopies, set them up, take them down, materials for those canopies, and then continuing our development of the story map for the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable. A story map is like a web page, but it can be very intensive with graphic, map intensive, which we can use that as to reach out to both fifth graders and as well as adults on what the roundtable is and what's in the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable and who manages water in it. So that's what this grant's going to cover.
So in your packet of information, there was the grant meeting minutes from April 10th. And at that meeting, the grants committee did recommend that this project go for approval in front of the board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve to hopefully administer the motion.
Mr. Chairman, as chairman of the PEPO committee, I wanted to accuse myself of the vote on these two grants. Okay.
And can you say that the PEPO committee supported this grant though too?
It's true. In our meeting earlier today, there was a motion and a second and unanimous support to forward these on to the roundtable tonight with our blessing as well.
All right. So we have the $25,000 grant. The required action would be a motion and a second for approval of the grant request for $25,000 of state PEPO funds. Okay. Kelly makes the motion. Do I have a second? Also, Mike, second. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion on this action?
Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to recommend approval of this $25,000 grant, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Oh, thank you. All opposed, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. Next slide, Sally, please. So this is part B of the PEPO grant, if you will. This one is the 3-year grant request. And Patrick will present a few slides here in a minute. We did include in the information the Yampa White Green grant application, the application that will be submitted to the CWCB. Also, there is a summary about this grant that was provided, and of course the grant meeting minutes. So with that said, for the next slide, Sally, I'll let Patrick present. And just as a reminder, we try to limit these presentations to 15 minutes, usually 7 or 8 minutes for the actual slide presentation, and another 7 or 8 minutes for the Q&A. So go ahead, Patrick.
All right, so this is again a request for actual just WSRF funds to continue public education participation outreach. Community Agriculture Alliance does. History-wise, and this really quickly, we're just getting $6,500. We used to come in and ask for large amounts of money for public education and participation outreach, do the things that the Roundtable wanted to do for that committee, which includes the videos that we have developed. We now have 7 videos. 7 videos. The radio ads that you hear yearly on the radio stations, regional radio stations, has print ads that normally we get out every year, and then regional newspapers on what the Roundtable is and what is the Roundtable working on. So we've asked for 150,000 and we've asked for 99,000. So those 6 years of grants are finally, it's probably taking longer to get to that. It's coming to close. We hope to have out that last WSRF grant closed out this year as it's due on that last 99,000. So again, we're coming in and asking for more money again to continue working on the broad breadth of what our PEPO committee does here. Still breaking down into the three continued tasks that we've done before. Task one. What was that? So task one is our social media task. That's going to be supporting the website that we have in here. That's hosting the website, paying for hours for Officer Sally's website. It takes a lot of time and money to keep that website running. Social media, both at Facebook and others as needed, Sally, and then still some extra funds in there for the story map development, because these story maps can be quite intensive to build. Task 2 is the radio ads, continuing those radio ads, getting 3 years of more radio ads that we run during the summer, and print ads as long as the newspapers stay alive, since Craig is now printing just on Wednesdays. 1 day a week too down there in the Reporter, as long as they keep printing. Task 3 is the sponsorships of local water events. We sponsor such things as the White River District, Devils Creek districts when they have water events, water speakers. We help sponsor that. The Yampa Water Review that's coming up, we're helping sponsor that. River festivals, etc. So anybody that has a water event, we help sponsor that. Main ones we've done before was we paid for the bus a couple of years ago when Rico was coming through for the Basin tour. So those are the events that we sort of sponsor that. And we come and ask us, Community Agricultural Alliance does that. And then of course we have to have hours that support those events, usually State of the River, etc. So those are basically the first tasks. Slide. Total grant is 91,000. 91,000 over 3 years. So this would be for fiscal year 2025, most likely 2026 and 2027 fiscal years. Again, there you can see it. You basically break it down to task 1. Goes up right correctly there. But basically, public outreach would be 37,000 first year, 24 to 26 for those years. First year's expensive because we're still trying to finish up that story map that we're developing right now. Print ads and our sponsorships. So it's basically the budget. Have it in the packet. Questions? We go to the next slide. So this is the total capital budget for the 3 years from in fiscal year 2024 in here, which we're just closing out here this July through to 2027. You can see what we're doing there. Totally, you see, you know, we stood up for 50,000 this year, 54 budgeted for next year, 55 for 26, and 56 for 2027, taking some interest increasements. You can see the $25,000 coming across on the PEPO, and we'll be doing the WSRF. Note, there's projects built in for this $25,000 PEPO grants as long as we keep them through. We're going to have them through 2027. So there's extra funding there for other projects that we can look at that we have not budgeted yet, but the PEPO committee will come up with projects for them. Questions? Concerns?
One thing I will point out, the total request is 91,000. There is a 25% match requirement. Half of that can come from in-kind, the other half can be actual cash. So what they're asking for the Ag Alliance is a total of $68,250 from the Yampa Green Basin table funds. Does anyone have any questions? We'll go to the next slide then, Sally. This grant was heard in front of the grants committee again on April 10th, and we are recommending this grant for approval. So Steve, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. So any questions on this grant? If not, the required action is going to be a motion and a second to approve this grant request for $68,250 of Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable WSRF funds.
I'll make a motion. This is Sonia Macy's. I'll move that we approve the grant request for $68,250 of YWG, BRT, WSRF funds.
Thank you, Sonia. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Rich Thompson. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other comments on this? Hearing none. All in favor of approving this grant for $68,250? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. All not in favor, please say nay. Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Right.
All right. We'll go to the next slide, Sally, please. Our second grant presentation tonight is the Stillwater Reservoir blanket underdrain. Again, just to let everyone know, the materials were in the packet of information online. We did provide a summary about this grant also, and certainly this grant was heard in front of the committee on the 10th, and those minutes are attached. John Redmond, who is, I believe, online now, will be presenting the slides on this one. John, can you hear us? And you want to unmute and then just let us know when you want to move the slides, and we'll just wait for your cue.
Okay. Yes, I can hear you, Frank. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move to the next slide then. Okay. As Frank mentioned, the grant request here, there was the title slide, is for the Bear River Reservoir Company. It's the Stillwater Reservoir located at the head of the Bear River system. Agricultural users have about a little over 5,000 acre feet of that water, 108 acre feet of municipal water for the town of Yampa. The reservoir is physically located at the end of the county road, or the Forest Service road. It's a major jumping off point for the flat top wilderness area there, and there's a lot of recreational use on the reservoir, as well as this, the reservoir releases sustain the stream downstream and toward Yamcolo as well. So that's just a quick introduction. I guess the one thing that I did want to mention here is that you know, we did have a grant request, and part of the funding was provided by the Roundtable in 2022. Those funds were used to prepare a report evaluating seepage mitigation alternatives for the reservoir, as well as some physical infrastructure capital upgrades at the reservoir. And I believe those slides are in the packet. The board has there as well. So that's some additional information that won't go over tonight, but it has been included. Next slide. Okay, the downstream blanket drain was one of the alternatives that was evaluated by Wheeler in the report that we had them perform the study on. They looked at an upstream mitigation alternative, a centerline alternative, which would be more of a classical drill and grouting, and then this downstream blanket drain. The cost for the upstream alternative was around $3 million, and that was not recommended. The centerline drilling and grouting program was around $2 million, and this downstream blanket drain was around $200,000 for the design, permit, review, and construction of this. The report from Wheeler that had also been submitted to the Roundtable recommended a combination ultimately of both this downstream blanket drain and then the centerline grouting option. But recognizing the funding limitations, they suggested that they would like, you know, the recommendation was to move ahead with this as the interim fix to address dam safety issues that had been identified by the Division of Water Resources. And then as we can secure additional funding going into the future, we would look at doing something more substantial to limit the seepage from a water storage efficiency standpoint. But this would address the dam safety concerns that the Division of Water Resources have. So the purpose of this drain is to filter the downstream seepage. Basically, the intent here is to make sure that we don't have a lot of the fine material. The core of the dam is a clay core, and that's what is low permeability and holds the water in. The concern from a dam safety standpoint is, you know, if we pipe or if we wash a lot of those fines out, that fine clay out, then we have the ability to wash out coarser materials and cause sinkholes or increase the seepage rates. So this is kind of a downstream patch, if you will, on the downstream face of the dam to address those dam safety issues. And hopefully, you know, we've run this by the Division of Water Resources. Dana Miller has indicated that she was supportive of us moving ahead with this, and that they would be willing to look at the storage restriction that is currently in place on the reservoir after we complete the construction of this downstream blanket drain. So that's kind of the 30,000-foot view. I think we can go on to the next slide and we can talk about the financing for the project. So this is our grant request. We're requesting 10% of the funds from the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable. Then the bulk of it would be from the CWCB Water Supply Reserve Funds. River District, 20%, and then the Bear River Reservoir Company would cash match 10% of this as well. So that's gets the total up to the $240,000 that is our current conceptual cost estimate. And I guess with that, I will open it up for any questions that have on this grant request.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Anyone online have any questions, or anyone in the room here for John?
Yeah, John, this is Steve Hinkbar. I've got a question. So if you do this blanket, is there a chance that it's going to solve the problem and you won't have to go to the center line drilling and grouting? Or do you think that's just somewhere in the future?
I think that as I said, we've talked with Dana Miller and the folks at Dam Safety, and I think this addresses their dam safety concerns. They're obviously not going to commit to anything until we've actually gone through it, but based upon the discussions we've had, the feeling is that this would address their dam safety concerns. We still have a reservoir that has quite a bit of leakage, and we're talking with various other folks, Kawa as well as others about the potential for funding to in the future look at addressing the storage efficiency, the seepage issues that we have.
If you were forced to do the center line grouting, did you say that was roughly $2 million?
Yes, that's the conceptual cost estimate is around $2 million.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question for the committee.
Yeah, this is Sonia. Sorry, I don't have a question, so I won't interrupt the person who had the question, and maybe just a comment later.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I was going to have you explain if the 10% match is considered enough for as far as our committee standards and roundtable standards. Is that where are we at with the project proponent matching?
So with this project being eligible for the statewide funds, whatever the project total is, the basin has to match 10% of that. The state could match up to 75%. In this case, they're only asking for 60, but our percent has to be at 10 or above.
Well, I was asking about the project component.
Oh,
they're only at 10%. Is that acceptable? Is that part of our?
Yes.
We have standards on what we're asking matches for from a proponent.
I can comment from a CWCB point of view. So the minimum match for a WSRF project is 25%. In the case where a project is coming in for a statewide ask, that 10% that comes from the roundtable counts as cash match from the applicant. So
that still only puts it at 20%.
Right, but the River District funding, I'm assuming that's the CRD number there.
Yes.
That 20% also counts. So really, you've got 40% match of the total project cost as far as CWCB is concerned.
Yeah. So that means.
So any like previous grant funding or a loan that all counts as match from our standpoint.
So Jeff, it's not just the proponents' money that's used towards a match, it's proponents plus any other grants that they may receive from other entities that goes towards the match. That makes sense. So, Sonia, that's your question, Jeff?
It does. So, but let me follow up. So, in other words, if they had extra money from, say, the River District or something, there'd be a scenario where the proponent wouldn't have to match anything and still be eligible.
Well, if a grant's been awarded to a project proponent, you know, they could bring that to the table as a match for another grant, as long as it's not CWCB funding. So you can't take a water plant grant that's been awarded and use it as match for a WSRF grant, but you could take River District money and use it as match. Certainly, you could take Bureau of Reclamation money and use it as match for CWCB grant.
I will throw in though too, for the River District, we're pretty reluctant to give, I don't know that it has never been done, but we usually require some kind of cash match from the applicant. It's not common that we would allow zero.
We do too, with our guidelines. There has been in the past you could obtain a waiver to not have a match, but those guidelines got updated in 2022.
Yeah, so we did that to just create consistency, and I'll just add to Becca's point, we require some level of cash match too. Where that cash comes from is maybe a little bit gray in the sense of if you've been awarded a grant, you know, that counts as cash match as long as it's not another CWC grant, if that makes sense. Anything that's awarded grant-wise, or if you've already been approved for a loan, we consider that your money. The waiver, we did that because WSRF was really the only CWCB grant program that had that language. And when we kind of reviewed the waiver requests, they were almost always the PEPO Basin coordinator to create more money for that $6,500. And so to create consistency among the grant programs, we took the match waiver away from WSRF, but still allow it for the PEPO Basin coordinator grant because we found that a lot of entities that were applying for PEPO money or doing those programs, you know, could use the waiver.
Okay, thanks. Good. Yeah. Okay, Sonia, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I just wanted to weigh in with Routt County's strong support of this project. You know, we have put in funds to this, not in the 2024 year, so they wouldn't reflect in this grant cycle. But we've been receiving regular updates and we're really impressed with the way the project's been handled. I think it's important to note that the project cost has gone down from, you know, upwards of, I think, 11 to 14 million to now 5 million based on some of the work that's been done to sort of re-engineer the spillway. And we just received an update from Oak Creek. We were really impressed with the work. I would urge everybody here at the table to support the grant, but also to look for other ways to support this important opportunity to make this situation safer and obviously more secure for water futures for the affected parties. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew that Routt was all in on this, and we're really happy to support it. I'm happy they've applied here and would be happy to support the grant and hope everybody else will. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sonia.
Anyone else have any questions? Or move
I guess.
Next. Go ahead, John.
I guess just going ahead, Sonia was mentioning, I think that was about the Sheriff's Reservoir project. This is the Stillwater one. I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear that they're different projects.
Thanks for the
Thanks, John.
Okay, if there's no other questions,
Just get busted.
there's no other questions. This grant request has been recommended for approval by the grants committee. And in front of you on the screen there is our required action summary, and Steve will take it from here.
Okay, so the required action is a motion and a second for approval of this grant request for $24,000 of Yampa White Green Basin WSR funds and $144,000 of CWCB WSRF statewide funds. Do I have a motion? Brenner moves the recommended motion. Okay, Ken Brenner recommended the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Callie? Scritchfield. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other comments on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending approval of this grant, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes.
Right. All right. Our final grant application presentation is the Upper Yampa Reservoir Rehabilitation Project. Rick Peterson, who is here tonight with the Colorado Ag Water Alliance, will be presenting this one. The grants committee heard this one on April 10th. Again, the summaries in the packet, grant applications both for the Yampa White Green application and also the CWC grant application are all in the packet too. I think if you want to go to the next slide, Sally, we'll let Greg go through these slides, and so it's all you, Greg.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm Greg Peterson. I'm with the Colorado Ag Water Alliance, and I'm going to talk a little bit. Then I'm going to pass it over to Mindy. She's with the DNR. She's going to chat a bit about this, and then we'll wrap up. We were able to pull 3 of the reservoir owners away from their cattle this time of year, and just have them add a little bit to finish up before we go to conversation. So I'm pretty excited about this project. I mean, we're asking the roundtable $20,000 statewide account, bit over $92,263. We've submitted an application and met with the River District for $45,000, and then we have the landowner, the reservoir owner match of $19,730 for a total of $176,993. And so this project, what essentially we're asking, we are grouping 7 reservoirs together. I've done this a lot individually of working with one reservoir owner and going once to get a grant to pay for the engineering and design. And then when we get that done, we go back again to do a grant for the construction. And this is really Mindy's idea. She reached out to me and she pulled all these people together, and of these 5 ranches, and amongst the 5 of them, they own 7 small private reservoirs. And so I think let's jump to the next slide. So all these reservoirs, they're located right in the Yampa area in South Route County. Together, they make up almost 2,000 acre feet. So, almost 1,200 acre feet. So 1,191 acre feet. The ditches that they feed water to serves about 2,680 acres. 6 of the reservoirs are conditionally satisfactory. So for those of you not familiar with dam safety language, that means, every year they've got what they need to do according to dam safety. And if they don't address those concerns, they go from conditionally satisfactory to unsatisfactory. And if you're unsatisfactory, you then recommend it for restrictions. And one of the reservoirs is unsatisfactory and is currently restricted. So all of these, and by restricted, not able to have as much storage in the reservoir as it can. And they're all located on Lawson, Watson, South Hunt, Dome, Whipple Creeks. 3 of the ranches are exclusively agricultural. 2 ranches they've branched out into recreation, hunting, weddings, cross-country skiing, and fishing. The group approach, I think what we're really excited about here is it's really going to reduce our costs. Already the engineering we got back the engineers themselves were surprised how inexpensive it was. Applegate Engineering, just by saving their time and traveling. And all of these reservoirs, they're likely all going to need their outlets redone. And the technology and the equipment that we're looking at doing that is that newer technology some of you might be familiar with, where they insert a sleeve in the outlet, put a little robot in there that sprays a UV light on it and hardens. And just mobilizing that equipment costs a lot of money. And now the fact that we've got 7 reservoirs in one area, they can all share in on those costs when we get to construction and really help keep those prices down. And just a lot easier to manage this as a pulling them all together. I know, Mandy, if you want to just chime in a bit and just you're the one working up there all the time, and what is the value of these reservoirs to a lot of these irrigators?
And so, yeah, some of these reservoirs, it may seem not like a lot of water when you talk about 1,200 acre feet with some of these other reservoirs that's large. But anytime we talk about the importance of reservoirs, I always think of what Commissioner Mitchell talks about when she talks about the Colorado River issue, that, we don't have these huge storage tanks above us to save us anytime we have water issues. So all these small ones that we have, we need to keep them in effective and efficient working order. And so to continue on with that, the hydrology going forward, we're kind of seeing a trend in where even if we have a good snowpack, it melts like this. We'll get a kind of a stair step up to the peak, and then it just melts. Last year, for example, 2023, pretty epic year in recent years, and that melt off was below minimum by the time we got to July. So that means runoff later in the season. It's happening earlier, so we're not having water later in the runoff season. So that's where these reservoirs kick in. So they're going to become more and more important. So not only is it helping, rural agriculture, stay in the valley, but when these guys start irrigating later in the season, because of the type of irrigation that they're doing, the flood irrigation, the type of topography, the soil, the majority of that water goes back into the system. So any water that we're not getting from runoff, these guys are putting in from those reservoirs. And so that's helping with habitat, that's helping with wetlands. That's helping recharge, that's helping all these downstream users, all these extra benefits. And also on the majority of these streams, there are in-stream water rights. And so I see these reservoirs being more and more important as we go forward and not having, that runoff and those later season water availability.
And so the bulk of this work is going to be doing the required engineering designs for dam safety in order to eventually do the outlet work and a few other repairs. The other part of this is that there's what dam safety calls maintenance, and that's work that reservoir owners are allowed to do without an engineered plan. And we met with all the reservoir owners and went through those task items, and that's where really they're going to be contributing, I think it's a bit over 600 hours of their time in whether it's dirt work, tree removal, work on some flumes, outlets, inlets, and that's a really big part of their contribution. And I think, I'm prepared for your question, Jeff. You asked with just the last group, their contributions in kind, and this was a choice I made. And so if anything that's a bad choice, let me know. But I'm thinking that this is phase 1, that really the real project is phase 2. And in probably, I'd say 2 years, we'll be back here again. And that's when they can't contribute in kind to the construction of these. And that's when they're going to have to be putting up cash. And the last thing I want is us to have some nice, wonderful designs that are all paid for, and that they can't get the money together to go through with construction. So I think the next slide. And as Mandy mentioned, I mean, these are private reservoirs, and they're for irrigation use. But really, because of the inefficiencies of dirt ditches, flood irrigation, you really see a big benefit that's beyond these 5 ranches. And so we had Wilson Water Group go through and put these numbers together. And so you've got all the reservoirs on the left, their average storage, and really just estimate the consumptive use that each of them get from each of these reservoirs, and really how much is making it back to the river. And in general, most of the water they're storing in their private reservoirs, they're not even consuming. And the majority of it is making it back to the river later in the season when warmer weather, warmer water, higher demand. And so I want us to just recognize too that the benefit of all these small little buckets is there's a big public benefit from that because of those inefficiencies that we battle. So I think I'm just going to give a moment. And if I'm glad that we were able to pull the three of you here, if you kind of want to just introduce yourself and just chime in a bit about just the value of this reservoir to your operation, but also just long term, what are your plans? Because we're hopefully going to be able to fix this over the next few years, but really to keep these in great shape. I don't know who is interested in going first.
Well, thanks for having us. I'm Phil Grossi. You know, we really don't have a lot prepared. We just appreciate you guys considering this. I think the timing is there because of the process that we have where we're not putting in corrugated steel pipes that are all rusted. This technology is going to last, what was told me, 100 years, because it's basically plastic. So this is an investment that we're not going to have to be looking back on in 30, 40 years and one that, you know.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that to your daughter, would you?
My name's Chip Harold, and again, I appreciate everybody just giving us this chance. For the short term on this one, we just see this as a stepping stone to get going on the project. Because as an independent rancher, for myself to get the engineering on it and then try to fund it myself, there's no way. And I don't know, with rising costs, we all know about all that. We can only run so many cattle, and that's our bottom line. And these reservoirs are all, what, 100 years old, all of them, I would guess.
Yeah.
And we just got to the end of their life, and then now we're having to do something major. So we see this as a chance for us to contribute what we can at this moment so that we can get the engineering into these projects.
Tyler Snyder, Fish and Cross Ranch. I've got the ranch owns 3 of the reservoirs on this list: Heart Lake, McShivis, and Bull Park. The average appropriation years since the water was appropriated on those 3 reservoirs is 122 years. The average adjudication in years old is 76 years. But like Heart Lake, it was appropriated in 1892 and then adjudicated in 1934. So it's just aging infrastructure. My hope is that we get these, and to dam safety, I think the concerns from dam safety have been kind of redone and they've been given to us at a higher level. So now we're expected to do more with 100-year-old infrastructure. I think it's time to redo the infrastructure for something that hopefully will last another 100 years, but now we'll have dam safety over us watching how things are moving as the new construction ages and the new infrastructure ages here. I guess we're kind of just asking, and we really appreciate you considering this, kind of help us get restarted. But from my personal perspective, if we make another 122 years on this infrastructure, we'll be doing a great job.
I think that's it. Just questions.
Anyone have any questions for Greg? I do want to acknowledge, gentlemen, thanks for coming. Appreciate that. It's nice to have the proponents here. Great, thank you. Is there any questions online or from anyone in the room for these folks? I've just got to say the same thing. I appreciate you guys coming. You know, a lot of people ask for the money, nobody ever showed up. So. That's nice.
The heifers were cooperating.
And then I liked the approach of the multiple reservoir group thing. I mean, that makes total sense. So, yeah, that being said, I'd like to make the motion to approve this grant.
We're running that next slide. Getting ahead of us, Mike, which is great.
Yeah, no, we're actually packaging a similar group of 5-7 reservoirs in Grand County based on the same model.
So I'll second it.
Okay, so Mike Camblin made the motion, Kelly Spitfield seconded, recommending approval of the grant request for $20,000 in Yampa White Green Basin WSRF funds and $92,263 of CWC WSRF statewide funds. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Motion's approved. Right?
All right, you want to go to the next slide?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for showing up. Thanks so much. The next item that the grants committee heard on April 10th was a request for a letter of support from Jonathan Bauer, who is representing Little Snake River Water Conservancy District. This is a letter of support, so there's not any request for funds, if you will. We've given Jonathan 5 minutes to run through these quick slides. So Jonathan, I'll turn it over to you and go ahead.
Thanks, Frank. Like you said, we have an existing project. We've secured funding for it, and we're moving on to the next step, applying with the CWCB through the water plant grant to complete the funding necessary to do this. And we're just looking for a letter of support from the roundtable to carry along with that application and take the way to the roundtable with it. So that's what we're asking for. We can go next. So Little Snake River crosses over, and I'm kind of talking in the Savory Little Snake River Water Conservancy District and the Pothole Water Conservancy District, which is the Colorado side of the Conservancy District line. And we come down Battle Creek, Little Snake River, and Sabre Creek. Within that stretch of Little Snake, it crosses the state line 16 different times from here down to here. So we have a bit of a complexity when it comes to funding and planning and administration and all of that. And within that, it's 59 river miles. We've got 27 different diversions that have all been rehabilitated. We've spent over $15 million in the past 20 years building this river system. And it irrigates over 19,000 acres. So that's the system that we have in place. Really the work started back in 2001 when High Savory Reservoir, which is far up Sabre Creek, went in, and we started having issues with fish passage and invasive fish as well. And through that, we started working with Trout Unlimited to do a barrier study, and we've been improving the river for habitat and agricultural use ever since.
What are each of the pins?
Those are all the different diversion structures along the river. So we have secured half of the money. We've got a $1,563,000 project. This is 3 different diversion structures. We also have about a mile of bank stabilization, over a mile of channel delineation, 4 acres of riparian vegetation improvement, and overall from one structure to the next, there's 10.5 miles of river with direct impacts from this. And so of that $1.5 million, we've got half of it secured already, either through in-kind from the Pothole Water Conservancy District on grant management and admin, Little Snake River Conservation Districts got $87,000 in engineering and design work. NRCS funding through the landowners, $415,000. Just received from the River District $250,000 for this project. Landowner cash at $12,000, and Trout Unlimited just contributed another $3,000 to help with the grant writing administration at this stage. So we're going to ask for the remaining 50%, that's $781,000 from July. So the question that I have is, would you all support us in this endeavor through a letter of support to carry on this 50% match request to the water plan grant and Ashley Garrison and the rest of the CWCB?
Questions for Jonathan? This request was heard by the grants committee, and we are, as a committee, recommending support. Steve has drafted a letter which was included in the packet.
Page 68. It's a ways back.
So that's what would be said to CWC with respect to this letter of support.
Who made the motion?
Doug Davis moves. Runner seconds.
Dave? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion in the room or online?
That's good work.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable writing a letter of support for this project, please say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed, say nay. Okay.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you, Jonathan.
That's the end of 5 minutes.
You did. Thank you so much.
You're close.
Final thoughts. That's the end of our committee update. Does anyone have any questions for me or other committee members in the room? If not, we can move on. Thanks for your time. We'll appreciate it.
When's the next applications are due?
They're not due until September 18th, I believe.
Yeah.
So we got quite a bit of before the next cycle starts. Then the grants committee will meet that first or second Wednesday in October.
So Sally, there's one presentation slide, one letter for the ASO flight data.
Oh,
It's just in the May directory. It's not under the grants or anything.
Okay.
One's just a single slide, and the other's just a one-page letter of support. So I got a request from Emily Lowell with Upper Yampa Water Conservation District for a letter of support for the ASO flight data. So you all heard Jeff Dean's presentation. They had the money to fly this year. So Emily and Upper Yampa are trying to get money so that they can get flights for 25 and 26. So she didn't get before the grant committee meeting. I assumed that Jeff's presentation earlier in this meeting would serve as the kind of the presentation for what's going on. We've supported Jeff's work in 2022, and you have that file up.
Which one is it, Steve?
It should be ASO letter of support. So so it's the CASO flight LOS detail.
Yep.
That's the first one that Emily wants to talk about.
All right, is that not?
Nope, that's the letter. Can you get that?
Yep.
It's a little one, just a single page PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get your slide loaded in a minute. Emily, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, thanks. And thanks, Steve, and everybody for accommodating this last minute request. We became aware of this funding opportunity in early April. So our timeline has been a bit crunched, and these applications are due this Friday. So I appreciate your willingness to work with us on short notice to ask for this letter of support. Like Steve said, Jeff gave a nice presentation earlier tonight about the details of the ASO flight program and the work being done across Colorado and specifically in the Yampa and Elk basins. In 2022, the Yampa and Elk were funded for the snow off flight by the CWCB. And this year, we've been able to get funding for 2 flights, and that was funded by the Upper Colorado River Commission. And so when this grant opportunity came up, we felt that it was pertinent and timely for us to try and go after this additional funding through the Bureau of Rec. Based on kind of the numbers and the funding that we were able to secure in the short amount of time, we're looking at 2 years of flights and 2 flights per year for 2025 and 2026, again, to build on the work that is being done this year. This slide basically just outlines the request to the Bureau of Rec and then the funding that we've been able to secure. So the grants could be up to $1 million to the Bureau of Rec. We're requesting just about $850,000. We have in-kind matching from ASO, funds committed from CWCB. We have a request into the River District, and then Upper Yampa is putting in matching dollars and in-kind. Long term, I think Jeff talked a little bit about it. I think they're working on expanding some hopefully sustainable funding to expand this program into the future. But this seemed like a good opportunity to try and go after this grant. And so just wanted to come to the roundtable tonight to see if we could request a letter of support for this grant application.
You can throw that letter of support up. I think the letter of support is in your packet. Yes. But it's a pretty quick turnaround. I've got to sign it and ship it tomorrow. It's a bit damn late, so we want to make sure we have that one ironed out, ready to go, because she's got a quick turnaround to get this granted.
Kim. Emily, I want to thank you for the Upper Yampa District taking the initiative to apply for these funds to continue this program. It's taken a number of years to get us this far. This is important that we have these applications go in because we're still in the process of really convincing the UCRC and the Bureau of Rec that this is an investment they want to make. And we want to not only be able to do the elk and the Yampa, but it'd be nice to do the flat tops and the little snake as well as part of that data gathering for the entire Northwest Colorado area. This is critical data. We're not asking them to come and build us a giant reservoir. We've already got one. We just need to be able to measure it more accurately so we can more accurately predict what kind of a runoff we're going to have and what kind of accommodations we're going to need to make. And this also helps us a lot in our negotiations with the lower Basin states of Colorado River compact issues by being able to accurately quantify that we're using well under our allotment that is in the Colorado River compact. We're not hoarding water from them. We're using what is available, and it's a percentage of what we're entitled to. So I think these programs are critical, and I would move support for this letter of support for the ASO grant to the Bureau of Reclamation from the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy.
I have a motion by Grant. I have a second that. Sorry. Alphone will second that. Okay, second by Grant Alphone. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this letter of support? And the letter is out there in your packet and online. So hearing no discussion, all in favor of writing or the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable sending a letter of support for this grant, please say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Motion is approved.
Thank you very much.
So,
All right, thanks, Emily.
Good luck, Emily.
Thanks.
all right, Big River Committee and / IBCC, Jeff and Ken. Who wants to lead off that discussion? Go, Jeff.
Ken, you know I always lead. Why don't you go first tonight?
So everybody's tired of listening to me talk. They like to hear you.
Okay, I'm happy to do it. Sally, do you mind if I share my desk top here? My screen? Is that okay?
We should be able to.
Can you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Short update. The main thing that Big River is following, you'll recall, the proposals for the post 2026 operating guidelines. Just a quick reminder, the interim guidelines change from the supplemental environmental impact statement, which we responded to and tried to counter the lower division's proposal. That all efforts by upper division seem to have kind of fallen on deaf ears. So from now till 2026, looks like the lower division is sort of getting their way. In March, there were submittals from both upper division and lower division for the foundation for operating after 2026. If you remember from last meeting, there are some real substantial differences between the upper division proposal on the left and the lower division's proposal on the right, including, capping the volume of releases from PAL, whether we're going to base the operating parameters on meet and PAL volume, including a threshold, or we're going to count total system contents, including all of the reservoirs in the Colorado River system. And then who's going to have to reduce usage if it ever gets there. So just a reminder, we talked about those things last meeting. There really hasn't been a lot of external movement. So just, Ken and I stay in touch with DNR, and especially with Amy Osteich's group. You notice we didn't have the commissioner's corner this month because they're just kind of trying to monitor as the Bureau goes through and analyzes both of those proposals. So we don't have a lot to report, but I just wanted you to remember sort of what the conflict looks like there. I will say Ken and I attended remotely a presentation by Commissioner Mitchell in late March. I think maybe it was the 19th, an online presentation where she outlined this, the upper division's proposal, and I thought, and Ken, I think we agreed, did a really nice job of laying out our position and setting the tone for the negotiations to come. So that's where that thing sits. And, you know, Ken and I just thought we ought to remind you because it's not going to go away. It's going to be important, and we're going to monitor that sort of through the summer. Questions about that? Okay, that was sort of the main thing we wanted to talk about from a Big River perspective. Ken, I'm going to stop sharing, and you've got the con here.
Thanks. Yeah, from the IBCC portion of the report. Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Is there a deadline when that has to come about? I mean, is the Bureau of Rec said, hey, you guys have got to have this solved by?
Well, I think that's come and gone. We're in the NEPA process now. And what we did was, since the negotiations didn't really come to fruition, the upper basins submitted their report and their recommendations to the Bureau of Rec, and the lower division sent theirs in. That's what the comparison was. That's how far apart we still are. Jeff, have we heard a lot about what the status is on the negotiations? I mean, are those, I assume they're still ongoing in some form.
Yeah, that's, you know, Amy's got her finger on that, and you know, we're just trying to stay in sync.
Looks like Emily Mac from CWCB is on.
Oh, is Emily here? Yeah, Emily would have a good comment.
Usually that's me. She wants to say something.
That's right. I turn on my camera when I'm paying attention. I think the question was about timeframes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, where are we at?
So the upper division states and the lower basin submitted the two alternatives. The deadline was set because the Bureau of Reclamation needed time to model the alternatives in order to work through the NEPA process, because the current 07 guidelines expire in 2026. Technically, they expire December 2025, but they govern operations through 2026. So that's the time frame that everyone is working back from. So we can expect an update on the Bureau of Reclamation's modeling efforts over the next several months, probably in the fall would be my guess. Where we'll know information about how they've modeled the upper division alternative and the lower basin alternative.
And Emily, they're going to come back with a preferred or recommended alternative in the NEPA process for the post-2026 negotiation. And then there's a comment period, and then there's a record of decision. Is that the chronology?
It's tough to say. There's a lot of paths that this could follow. In theory, yes, that's one path. What we saw with the 07 interim guideline supplemental environmental impact statement just this past year was a set of alternatives. So we saw two alternatives. And then a few months later, a separate lower basin alternative was submitted, kind of out of sync with what we thought was going to be the time frame. So there's definitely some flexibility, and unfortunately, we're all kind of in the same boat here, where there's a lot of paths it could go within the NEPA process, unfortunately.
Thank you. Is that good, Mike? Good. Any other questions on this portion of the presentation? As far as what the IBCC is doing, we did have our meeting in February. I think we gave you a pretty good summary. We spent a whole half hour on that this last meeting. The two things that we're focused on right now that will probably be a key part of the discussion for the June meeting is the one document that has two lists on it. One list of what are good qualities to have in an IBCC member. And you can sort of read between the lines, and it's probably for Roundtable members as well. And so just acknowledging that, you know, go look in the mirror. Are we doing what we said that we were going to try to do? Are we putting our best foot forward? The second part is a list of qualities that should be considered pretty essential to having a successful statewide program on a project of whatever nature. We discussed about it, half a dozen of them at the last meeting. So that's one thing, that sheet of paper that has those two lists of qualities. The second thing is it looks more and more like we're going to use a no/low regrets 2.0. There was an original low and no regrets proposal that was done back in 2013. And we're thinking that this might be a pretty good place for us to, basically I've been describing it as kind of a bucket, big basket. And we're going to put good ideas in, ideas like the ones that we discussed at the meeting here 2 months ago. And those different ideas are going to be things that are fairly easy, that we could probably all agree, the low-hanging fruit, projects and ideas that just make sense, that pretty much everybody is going to say, yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. We should be working on that. You know, like additional funding for infrastructure, some additional storage. There were a lot of good ideas that came out of the drought task force that didn't turn into a piece of legislation. So those may be ideas. But we're going to throw all these ideas into this basket. We're going to talk about that at this June meeting. And then there'll be we'll try to bring all this to fruition at the C9 Summit, tentatively scheduled for October 1 and 2 down in Crested Butte. There'll be 2 days of activities, but we're going to definitely have a really good chance to talk about how we want to use this no and low regrets to empower and engage the Colorado Water Conservation Board wants to engage the Basin Roundtables. You know, we've been around for the better part of 20 years now. We have the ability to contribute ideas on some of these topics. So that seems to be where the IVCC is going. In other words, there could be a pretty busy year in 2025 or even 2026, because these projects are probably not all going to be able to accomplish them in 1 year. But that's sort of laying out how we're going to be moving forward over this next couple of years. Russ, what did I forget?
Oh, you have it.
That's my report. Or you have any questions? That's what we've been working on. Thank you.
Any questions on anything that Jeff or Ken talked about? Hearing none. Peppo, Ken, you're up again, or
no? We're gonna let Patrick and Sally
do that.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about your video and your story map.
All right. Yeah. So
radio ads.
So first of all, I probably won't be here next meeting, so Sarah's gonna have to do it. So I won't throw her under the bus just to play turn. So we had our video project that we did in 2023. It's finally finalized. We had the final version, and we are going to get it on the website here maybe next week, hopefully. Just a short introductory video saying really what the Basin Roundtable is and what we do here for the YWG Basin Roundtable. Like I said, the Peppo Committee is working on the story map. The TEEP has helped leading that initiative. The story map again is a sort of a website as you think about it, but it's a map that you can do a lot of information about what is the Yampa YWG Basin Roundtable and what is the Yampa YWG Basin, who are the water people and a target audience. It would be 5th graders to adults. So you have to use that in the classroom as well as for adults, where I'm at these days anyway. Also, we have canopies coming up here. You see a list of events at the bottom of the sheet. We need you guys, members, to spend state money to put on these canopies to get out there and talk with people. So please sign up if you got one of these events you attend. We got 2 canopies. We got brochures. If you don't know what to say, at least you can handle out brochures of what the YWG Basin Roundtable is and how collaboratively we try to work. Or download the video on your computer and just play the video. There's 6 videos you can also pick from on that as well. So please sign up. Email Sally@YWG.com if you have any questions about how to sign up.
Also, I have handouts in the back here forever with whoever has the canopies in their possession.
We gotta have somebody take brochures down to the fishing derby at Rangeley. So anybody going to Rangeley? Close to Rangeley? Someday. Does anybody know where the canopy is? Is it Rangeley or Meeker?
I thought Alden said he had it in Rangeley.
So Alden has it, so I gotta get the brochures down to the canopy for the Kenny Reservoir Fishing Derby. So
What's its date?
June 1st.
Oh, yeah, right.
So
the signups, we really do want to challenge you as Basin Roundtable members to try to tackle at least one event. Pebble is one of the few things that's specifically mentioned in the 1177 legislation that established the roundtables. And it's not just Patrick and Sally and I that have that responsibility, it's all of us collectively. So this is a chance for you to engage with, you have somewhere in this list of events is something that you know you're going to be at. You may be at a number of them, but at least try to get one event this summer. We're going to make you $50 reimbursement for coming and picking this thing up and setting it up. So and it's actually really a good time. It's a really nice canopy. The graphics are amazing. If you want to know what you're going to talk about, just sit in the canopy and explain what's around you, because it's really interesting stuff. Good maps, good graphics, and you'll have materials that you can pass out. I guarantee you, it's not a bad thing. Even the more bashful people on the committee, I know, can handle that responsibility, and it'll make it a lot easier to sign up next year. That's my request. Thank you.
Anything else?
We're working on new radio ads. Actually, I haven't heard from the radio station, so I called them to make sure that we have radio ads this year. So, yeah. Depending on, we're gonna
do 9 new topics at our meeting earlier today. So we will have new radio ads. Sally and I are going to start working on the scripts.
Let us know if there's anything wrong with the web page.
Jay? So can you put the agenda back up, Sally? Yeah, I just want So I wanted to talk a little bit about the announcements. So Sally's going to put together, what did you call that, Sally? That you're going to send out for this, maybe Jennifer.
Oh,
itinerary? No.
no,
RSVP.
yeah, RSVP.
Yeah.
I called it something.
You called it something.
I can't remember.
So on July 10th, which is the morning of our next meeting, I've talked to Mike Camlin, who's represents the Juniper Water Conservancy District, and they are willing to do a walk-in tour of pretty much all the work is everything done, Mike?
Yeah, we've got some reclamation to go through, but I do want to correct that. So the Juniper Conservancy District doesn't have anything to do with the Mayville Irrigation Diversion Structure.
Oh.
2 totally separate entities.
Okay.
Yeah, so I probably should have caught that when we did the agenda corrections, but yeah. So I would put Mayville Irrigation District Diversion.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, Mike and I guess Jennifer Wellman would be we would meet down in Mayville, walk in, take a look at all the work done on the diversion, come back to Craig, have lunch either at Lowry Simpson Park or at the Craig Chamber if the weather's not cooperating. And then go down and look at the ongoing work at the Yampa River Corridor project that's there at the Craig City water intake. And then likely the Big River Committee will either start at 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. So it'd be a good chance for our roundtable members to kind of socialize a little bit, do a walk-in, see the work that's done there at the Maybelle diversion, and see the work that's going on at the Yampa River Corridor project. And we want to get some pictures because the new video that we got is not Yampa White Green memberships, folks, that are in the picture that shows a roundtable in action. That's embarrassing.
There's, your executive committee's been working on these agendas and we've been talking about participation on, and we went through, you all remember when our roundtable meetings, we had pretty much every roundtable member was there in person, and you'd have 75 people total in the room. The pandemic changed all that, but we want to get back to where, especially if members of the roundtable should be here in person when you can. And so one of the things that might help with that is this tour that we're going to set up in concurrently with the roundtable meeting, so that you just say, okay, I give up, I'll just take the day and go be a roundtable member. And we're gonna feed you twice. My gosh, what a deal. But you'll get to see two of the biggest projects that we've worked on, and hopefully get a little more synergy about our efforts and what we've been able to accomplish, and all that we have left to look forward to accomplishing.
So remind me, what time did they start?
So we talked about being in Maybelle, or Mike's going to give us directions on how to get to the parking lot where we can walk in. But the walking tour would start at 9 o'clock on July 10th.
Bring good shoes because it's a mile in there.
Yeah. Is it a mile back too?
So just don't schedule your doctor's appointments on the 10th of July.
I guess you can bring it in or you can throw it in the river.
And it'll take about 5 minutes.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
So, yeah. But it is impressive, and then there's so much history there that, people don't realize how much history is in there. And this new head gate is pretty impressive. It's every time I see it, I'm like, holy crap, that's a lot. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so I won't read through the announcements because you can all read them for yourself. But I got all of these announcements from the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable page, yampawhitegreen.com. So Patrick and Sally are keeping a good job of keeping all these up there. I just wanted to get them out on paper to say there's a lot going on, and if folks can attend some of these, that would be great. If you can man the tent and hand out some flyers and talk about the Yampa White Green Basin, even better. And then I wanted to talk a little bit. We never really, as an executive committee, we look ahead all the time about what's coming in the next several meetings. But at our July meeting, we've got the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership folks that are coming. And then the Maybelle diversion and headgate modification. So Mike and Jennifer, I don't know if you're bringing any of the engineers or the construction people in, but
they both said that they would have representatives there.
Okay, so they have a great site with lots of pictures, lots of stuff that they took videos and lots of photos on as the project progressed. So it was, Mike showed us, gosh, I think in January or February, he showed it to our land use board, and it was pretty amazing. And I know there's more since then. So
yeah, looking forward to having everybody up. Everybody shows up.
Yep. So is there anything, so I'll ask again, is there anything that you guys would like to see in an upcoming meeting? So July and September, we don't have grants typically. So that gives us more time to do presentations. And I can get ahead of that, or executive committee can get ahead of that and try to get some folks lined up to come in and talk to you. If there's an idea that you've got for someone to come in and present. So those are the two that we right now we booked for July, and we still have some additional time. So maybe you Big River folks can strong arm Director Mitchell to come talk to us again, or get a bigger update from what's going on with negotiations in jail.
Very likely we'll have some news by then.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if by then there's been enough change for a new update on what is it, Colorado.
I was going to mention if it was of interest to the roundtable, I'd be happy to do even a 3-minute update at the beginning of each meeting.
There's a lot going on with that group, so yeah, we could easily be spending 5-10 minutes. If you guys would like to see that, it's really starting to move.
But we could also do, the next meeting, I could do a 15-minute, a little longer one, just to show where we're at, and then just give a short update.
Chuck, the industrial ride on stagecoach, and we're going to turn that into an instrument club. That'd be kind of interesting to understand that whole program.
I don't know anything about that.
Either. I read it in the newspaper somewhere.
Oh, really? You're going to do what with them?
Well, it's where there's the long term for the industrial ride on the Colorado youth has. Is that they're wanting to, if the power plant goes away and that water right goes away,
right,
do something to make the change case into an industry flow right.
Well,
no.
That was actually Thomas Kennedy that was here earlier. He's the water rights portfolio manager for Tri-State.
Mm-hmm.
And they did get their bill passed at Capitol. The governor signed it yet, but it was different from what we saw out of the task force. The in-stream flow thing, I believe it has gone away. The waiver on all the conditional rights was not part of the legislation, but they did get a waiver for their absolute rights with one provision, and that's that they must go back to the division court and get a historic consumptive use as a ruling on that. So that's where that's at right now. That's my understanding. Jeff, do you know more?
No, I had wondered if Chuck, if you were talking about that, what we always called the Tri-State and Excel bill. If that was it, then it's maybe it's not an in-stream flow. It's really similar to what Ken said. And we were very active in it.
Yeah. The word in-stream flow is in the article.
Okay. Well, we'll have to look at it, but
but it'd be interesting to understand, how that's going.
I was called Thomas 3 times if he wanted to say anything to us, and he said no. It was a utility company
bill, and I just wonder if that's where you got Colorado Ute from, maybe. I don't know. But
that's interesting. When did you read the article?
It may have been in the Inquirer, I don't know.
Okay. Both Upper Yampa and Moffat County were very involved in the drafting of that bill. If we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. It's on the phone.
Is in the steamboat pilot on Northwest, the coal-fired power plants in Northwest Colorado, and on the water rights even after plants closures.
That's it. It's what Ken and I were talking about.
Related to to that if the roundtable is interested. I know last year Zane Kessler from the River District came to talk about kind of a summary of the water bills that happened in the legislative session. This was a big one with dredge and fill. But so if that is of interest to the roundtable, I'm sure they would be happy to come in July or later and give us something.
Where is that? Did they pass that bill?
I haven't heard as of this morning. It was back to the House for them to take the amendments from the Senate. But yeah, but
and I'm assuming that was a 1079. There was two of them floating around.
Yeah, it was 1379. The speaker McCluskey still.
All right.
I think late this fall, we should have some pretty good information from our water supply study that we might be able to present. I don't know, but it'd be late this fall.
And that was your return flow study that you were doing? Yeah, we
love
to see that.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked with Upper Yampa folks about doing one on the Yampa, but we kind of decided we wait and see how you're.
Yeah.
We learned what we could from your study before we started our own.
Well, and I think right now, kind of where the model has been pretty well developed. Right now, the information we're collecting all summer will then be plugged in to kind of ground truth it. So we'll know more like this fall what that will all look like. So
you think September, Callie, or later?
You know, I need to ask Liz for sure, but let's, yeah, certainly do that.
Other ideas?
The economic impact assessment for the pumped hydro project will be done in September also.
Well, it will.
Yeah.
We'll probably be interested in that.
Yeah, I don't know if it would interest you all. It's more water quality. But we've had a 3-year project going on in Route County, and field studies of a ranch and also just this open space right by Stagecoach Reservoir as kind of a comparison. And we're in the 3rd year of that, and that will wrap up this this fall. And we've got that site with one rancher, and then we have 2 other ranchers on the western slope. So we've got 3 years of data. We've been looking at sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, and just trying to identify, get baseline data. Our whole reason going into this was we don't think we're the problem everybody else thinks we are. And we wanted to get some good baseline data of what is our impact and what is not our impact on water quality. And I was able to drive and convince 3 ranchers to monitor their runoff and beg them. And it's been a really interesting study so far. And we've got some great results, and we'll be really making the tours starting this fall. And I just know with Stagecoach getting a lot more scrutiny on that, just with water quality, I don't know if that would be of interest to you all.
Is that leading to the algae problem that they're seeing there? Is that what kind of prompted that?
And I believe I heard that the Upper Yampa spent $100,000 on water testing last year.
Okay.
There's a lot going on the Bear River. Just not even with the field study, but even the upper water sheds doing their modeling and trying to do nutritional loads, as well as the birding.
I'd be interested in that if you understand. I mean, if there's time. Sounds like it's kind of growing issue. I mean, it's always been there, but maybe.
Okay.
It's a appeal to the Upper Yampa because we want to keep the reservoir off the 303D list. It's really close.
Ready to get up? We'll go upstairs. Come on, let's go upstairs.
Is years, summers ago. Because the water quality.
Good girl. Good girl.
Okay, I've got a few ideas, so I'll start working on it. Yeah, thank you. So unless anybody's got anything more.
I do. I make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Oh, yeah.
Second.
Kristen, we need, so
motion to adjourn. So at the March meeting, T-Wright presented a motion to send a card to the O'Toole family for Pat. So we have a card. If y'all would like to sign it, and we'll send it to Pat's family after the meeting. So Kristen's got the card, but we'd like everybody to at least sign it or write something in it. So if you wouldn't mind. So now I take the vote. Did you make a motion to adjourn?
Davis.
Okay. Okay.
Brenner second.
Okay, Doug Davis, motion to adjourn, Brenner second. All in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for going. Yeah. Thanks, Russ. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.